Okay, so in this video, we're going to go through the content creation process. Okay, so we all have our reasons for not posting on social media, but the most common challenge that most businesses face is not knowing what to post. And in my opinion, there is nothing worse than starting with a blank canvas. So I'm going to make a few suggestions here to help you get started. Okay, so what I want you to do is start with fill in the blank templates. Okay, so the number one mistake blank makes when trying to blank. Why blank isn't working and what to do instead. Okay, so these are the things that I would say to start with. Just kind of get the cogwheels going, the cogwheels moving, start thinking about what you can do. And what we're trying to do here is figure out what people respond to, what people like, what responses you get, what questions people have. This is really what we're trying to do, because you'll hear me say this in a few videos. The fact is, we don't know what people are going to respond to, what they're going to say, and things like that. So we need to put posts out there and understand what people respond to. So these are things just to get you started. But at the end of the day, you need to understand what people respond to, what questions you have, or what questions they follow up with, and all things like that. Okay. So next one's relatable content. The struggle X or I faced or this person faced with X and how X overcame it. I used to believe X until I discovered X. The moment I realized X was holding me back, and then it's just kind of to get the ball rolling. So these are all things that you can do. Okay, but when we're breaking down what makes a good call to action, okay, so hook, what grabs their attention? Okay, so it's all about getting their attention, because that's the first step you need to make. So post something, make sure it grabs attention. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good the value is, nobody's going to see it. So make sure you've got a good hook, as it's called, and then the value, making sure it's engaging so the person wants to read it. Share stories, personal lessons, tips, tricks, hacks, advice, all these kind of things. But you need to understand what people respond to, what they don't, and eventually you'll find your groove. Okay, I can't tell you what the future is going to hold, but it's all about listening to what your customers are saying, what questions you see, what common themes you see, and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's the CTA, call to action. What do they need to do next? Is it click a link, DM? What do they need to do next? Okay, so there are multiple options, not too many, but there are multiple options. So it's being clear what they need to do next and why. So send me a DM with this and we'll get the ball rolling. Or send me a DM and I'll reach out. So just let them know like what they need to do next and what's going to happen. So just kind of it creates clarity. So they know what they need to do next, why they need to do it, what's going to happen. So there's not too many things that they're thinking about, because there's nothing worse than unanswered questions. Okay, so here's a good example. Hook, 95% of people are trying to build a business make this common mistake. Okay, so that I know would get a lot of engagement, a lot of opens, because I know that most people are struggling to they're trying to avoid mistakes. They're struggling to get their business going, or maybe they've got their business going and then they've just kind of plateaued. There could be multiple reasons, but it's going to grab their attention, and then it's about the value. Okay, hook gets their attention, value is what keeps it. Okay, so here is what actually works. Okay, deliver good quality content that is clear, concise, and captivating. So clear, so they know it applies to them specifically and not just something that they might be interested in. So it needs to be super clear. And then concise, don't waffle, because they will lose interest, and unless you get straight to the point, they're going to move on. Okay, that's just the way social media works. Once they become a leader, even a customer, it becomes a very different story. But once they're a visitor, you can't waffle. You've just got to get straight to the point. Okay, and then captivating. If it doesn't keep them engaged, they're just going to move on. Okay, they're there for a reason. You need to get to the point and answer the query why they're there, because if not, they're going to go and find it somewhere else. Okay, so understand this is a learning process and no one gets it right first time. So don't give yourself too much of a hard time because it's all about the learning curve. So no one can tell you what you should post. Only you can answer that because this depends on your niche, whereabouts you are in the process, your personality. There's a lot of things that go into it. So don't think that you have to do things like lives or reels either, because it depends whereabouts you are and your personality. Some people don't want to do lives, at least yet, and that's fine. No one should tell you which way you have to do it. All I can say is start posting, start getting some consistency going out there, and then move on and decide which way you want to go from there. But yeah, start with whatever you can be consistent with. That's the key. And then also what you're comfortable with. So personally, I believe I've already said this in here. I'm not a fan of scripts. Don't recommend them because so many people use them, and it becomes hard to be unique. That's the most important thing. But most of the time, it doesn't deliver because there are other pieces needed. So if I give you a script, say, "Oh yeah, this will get your attention," if you don't know what to do with that attention or turn them into a lead or a sailor, it doesn't matter. So I can say this script generated me this amount of sales, but the script is only going to get them to engage, turn into a lead, maybe DM you. If you don't know what to do from that point, it's not going to turn into the sale like I promised. So the scripts, it doesn't, for me, I don't like scripts. Okay. It just needs to follow the process, get their attention, make them want to find out more information, have a conversation, build a connection, and then turn them into a lead and a customer. Okay. So post, but remember, it needs to have the main objectives, turn them into a lead and or a customer, whichever way it turns out to be. Okay, so when posting, make sure it provides value, gives the next steps, so a call to action, and it gets the engagement. And if it doesn't, then we need to go back to the drawing board and think, okay, so why didn't that get response rate? Was it too vague? Was it the wrong audience? We've got to ask the questions. So you'll see me hear me say this in another one. We need to dissect, figure out why it hasn't worked, and what we need to do in order to get it to work. Okay, but this is kind of why I'm not a fan of content as such, because yes, you've got content. Content is required, but at the end of the day, when you're doing content, it has to be. You have to have things in place. Otherwise, it's not going to move very far. And then you're going to generate the engagements, but you're going to have nowhere to take them. Or maybe you've got them into a lead, but you've not got the product ready, so you're not going to make the sale. Or there could be 1,000,001 different things that go into it. So for me, like I said, I don't really recommend I don't really recommend content to start with, because I just think that it's a slow burner and it can take a very, very, very long time in order to get things moving. I'm not against content. I'm just saying that that's not where I would start. Okay, so that's just my 2 cents worth. By all means, if you want to use content, then this is what I would personally recommend. But at the end of the day, it's starting somewhere, figuring out what your audience is responding to, and dialing into that. Okay, so the fact is, nobody can tell you exactly what to post because everybody is different. Me and you could have identical businesses, post exactly the same thing, and we will still get different responses because we are different people. And that is the thing to understand. Okay, so, and another thing as well, just as a thought, people do respond depending on whereabouts they are. If you've caught them at the wrong point, they're going to respond very differently unless than if they was in a good mood. So you've got to understand that kind of thing as well. So there can be there's so many variables when it comes to content, okay, and also dealing with people. So there's no one size fits all approach. And what you have to understand is we need to figure out what works for you. So start with the templates that I've given you and just figure out which one, what people respond to, what people don't, what questions you get, and all that kind of stuff, and then dial it in from there. And the more you do it, the more feedback you get, the better content you can put out there, because you know exactly what content people are going to be responding to, and that's what you do. But you need to stop going through the process in order to figure that stuff out. Okay, so this is all about the content creation process. Hope you found this video useful. By all means, shoot me a message, send me an email, reach out in one way, shape, or form if you have any questions, and I'll certainly see how I can help.